Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. Every single day, I have the opportunity to help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today, I have an amazing guest. This guy is phenomenal. I met him a year ago at a conference, and he was actually the guest celebrity speaker at this conference, and it was larger than life. He walked up on stage, people were chanting his name, there was lights, music, he came on, and it was amazing. It was like meeting a rock star. Being able to hear him speak was a great opportunity because I was able to learn so much from him. He just finished a 6,288 mile tour across the United States on his book tour. And following that journey has been absolutely phenomenal because you got to see him do what he does best. He is a multiple ultra-marathon finisher. He is a 6-time international best-selling author, soon to be 7, I'm sure. And he is a real estate artist. He looks at real estate like 3D art. He is known as the Daredevil in developing and also the king of all dream homes. He is known as the modern day Renaissance man and a philanthro-capitalist. So please welcome Mr. Frank McKinney.
Fong, it has been an extreme honor to bring you along on that trip I just finished. I know you and I were corresponding from the road. And where are you? Actually, what country are you in?
I'm in Canada. This is Edmonton.
All right, so you're not too far away from me. Next time I do so what I just finished was a pre-release tour for my 7th book where I was gathering information and feedback, basically interviewing Americana as I went along the road. Where I'm coming to you from today, it looks like it could be anywhere. It's actually my oceanfront treehouse office. I closed the blinds behind me because the ocean is so bright that you wouldn't be able to see my face because where I work is 22 feet above sea level. I'm surrounded by 12 windows. And right behind me is the Atlantic Ocean in a treehouse. Like that's where I wrote all my books, all my 6 books, and I designed all my real estate artistry from. And I decided to put the pen down, put the computer down, and hit the road a month ago. I just got back after that 6,288 mile 22 city tour in my 1988 Yugo, which most people, you're going to have to Google what the Yugo is. But to put it in perspective, in the United States, there are 400 Bugatti Veyrons, which is a $3 million vehicle. There's only 200 Yugos remaining in the United States. That's how rare the car is.
Wow. So how did you come up with the idea to pick that car, and how does it kind of symbolize the mindset of that book?
Well, I can't release the title yet. My publisher says no title yet, but hopefully in the next month I'll be able to share the title. But it is a mindset book. I can say that. And what I wanted to do was, the book has, matter of fact, with me covering the title here, this is the chapter outline. It's all 25 chapters that I already have outlined. And what I wanted to do was interview people and get feedback on certain. There's two chapters in the book that are posed in the form of questions. And one of them is, what legacy do you aspire to leave behind? That's a very deep question. And there's one chapter that's devoted to explaining why motivation doesn't last, why inspiration wears off like a sunburn, but aspiration will alter your DNA. And I posed the question to Americana, to America, what legacy do you aspire to leave behind? And I felt that doing it in my 88 Yugo, which, to save you the Google trouble, it was one of the worst vehicles, supposedly one of the worst vehicles ever made, along with the Pinto and like the Ford Pinto and the AMC Pacer. It was one of the top 3 worst vehicles ever made. So it was an underdog. It wasn't expected to produce, to succeed. And I've had it since 2008. I've had that vehicle since 2008, and I have put care, I put concern, and I put belief behind something that doesn't even have a mind, right? It's just a piece of metal with an engine in it. And that little engine that could, which is a child's book that was written many years ago here in the United States, that little Yugo that could took me and soon to be all the readers of my book on this trek all the way from Florida, like the point down in Florida, down in Palm Beach County, all the way over to Death Valley, California, and 22 stops in between, and all the way back. Basically, I named the tour the Yugo We Go Tour because, Fong, as you go, we all go. As you realize the aspirations that you have and the effect that they can have on this beautiful world of ours, so goes the rest of the people that you influence. And I am, and I know you and I are going unscripted here, but I'm kind of concerned, A, maybe a little bit tired, B, of the number of people that I see where they allow some other entity, be it the media, be it the, their let me grab this phone here for a second. Be it this screen right here, this screen, what that does to influence our realities. And I have created my own reality. I'm an advocate for creating my own reality. That's why I work in a treehouse, Fong. I mean, I have all my people that work for me work from home. I let them work from home. I want to work in an environment that draws up my creativity and my ingenuity. And that was the purpose. Well, it's the bigger purpose is the book is really teaching people how to create their own reality and alter their DNA. But secondly, getting in that car and on a whim, basically traversing the country, getting information for that book.
Mm-hmm. Now, was there any point in time during your 6,000 miles where you go, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for? Or there was a point in time where you go, what, this is a lot larger and greater than I thought it would be?
Yeah, I'll never say something like this isn't what I signed up for, because anytime I'm met with an impediment on the road, which I was, plenty of them, I see it as an opportunity. So there was no, I wish I was home and, my house or my tree house. I was very glad to run into the challenge that I did run into. I didn't run into the mechanical challenges, oddly enough, but, weather challenges and elevation challenges, because that car is a carbureted car, meaning it needs oxygen to mix with the gas. And I was over 12,000 feet at one point in a car that has 61 horsepower. For those of you who aren't gearheads and don't know engines, 61 horsepower is about the equivalent of 3 Vespa engines. I mean, tiny little. So it didn't have a whole lot of horsepower. The Bugatti I referenced has 1,001 horsepower. I really feel that as I got into it, as you just said, this is turning out to be way more beneficial to this book than me just sitting up here in a bubble, in a vacuum, in a treehouse, writing my opinions on mindset, which are valid because it's worked for me, and I definitely have created my own reality. But getting that input from random people that I didn't know before I met them, ranging in ages from 17 to 87, wow. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to be able to keep that book to under 200 pages.
Now, most people during this situation where everybody is talking about COVID and they should be staying at home, you get up and go, you know what? I'm going to go on this 22 city tour and kind of come up with stories, talk to people, get engagement and all kind of stuff. Has this COVID situation changed the way that you were going to approach this whole tour?
Yeah. So I even had a kind of a life-threatening illness right around when COVID hit, not related to COVID, and it compromised my immune system. So, it probably, with the advice of my doctor, I took care. I'm not going to take a risk on my own health, but there's a chapter in the book, and basically it's one of my most significant chapters in my life that talks about the sensation of fear that we experience when we think about taking a risk. Not the actual taking of the risk, Fong. It's when we think about taking a risk is when that other 4-letter word, fear, sets in. And the analogy I've given in the past is if you're on a roller coaster and that metal bar comes clamping down over your waist, and as you're going up that first incline, you're terrified. Your heart's in your throat. Your heart's pounding. But once you take that first dive, what happens? The fear is replaced with excitement. You're going around on the roller coaster. It's very exciting. That's the way I see business. Mm-hmm. Is it's okay to be afraid. Sure, I had my trepidation before I pulled out of my own driveway. But once I hit the road, that fear left me, and it was replaced with excitement and joy and anticipation of the 6,288 miles that lie ahead of me.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Because so how during a period of time of, let's say, a year, how many times do you actually think of risk? Or is it something that you just go, you know what, it is what it is. I'm going to go at it head on, and it's not going to be an issue?
This is a very important question. So I'm going to confess that every day of my life, I am afraid. I experience fear every day of my life. And what that means to me now, as I'm, much older than you, and I've been in business a long time, is fear, as I said, is always associated with the thought of taking a risk. Okay, Frank, so you're thinking about taking a risk, so you're going to experience fear. That's natural. But what is the risk always associated with? Almost always, risk is associated with a big change or a big challenge in your life. Mm-hmm. That change or challenge could be financial, could be spiritual, could be relational, relationship driven, could be dietary. So when you think about making a big change or a big challenge, could be in business, could be with your relationships, could be personally, could be physically, going to the gym or running these 100-mile races that I run. I realize, okay, Frank, you're thinking about taking a risk. That risk is associated with a big change or a big challenge. And the result of thinking about taking the risk is the sensation of fear. I don't let fear stop me. That's the primary difference. I am afraid because God gave us the sensation of fear for a reason. Mm-hmm. I haven't done every deal that's been put in front of me. I haven't run every race that's been put in front of me because sometimes that sensation of fear tells us this is not the deal to do. This is one to walk away from. This is a race I shouldn't be doing. But more often than not, actually every time, I'm looking for a reason to say yes, mm-hmm. not for a reason to say no. And what I've noticed, and it's more often in the younger generation, let's say, maybe 40 and under, 30 and under, is with the availability of the information at our fingertips, when we want to Google something or research something or spreadsheet something, if you over Google, over spreadsheet, over analyze, over research, what you're really doing to the subconscious mind is you're allowing it time to find a reason to say no. You actually are subconsciously wanting to find the one article that you found that validates what your friend said, who's a naysayer, who says, Fong, that real estate investment is a bad idea. If you look hard enough, you'll find a reason not to do something.
Right.
So I don't over spreadsheet or over analyze or over Google. I will do my research, don't get me wrong, but I usually rely on the intuition, on that initial gut feeling to direct me whether or not to take a risk or not.
I think all the left brainers out there, their ears are starting to twitch once they heard what you said.
Well, the left brainer is the analyst, right? He's the analytic, and the right brain is the creative.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I want to, can we spend just a minute on that for a second? Because I think it's very important. You and I, and most everybody listening to this, were brought up by our parents or by our teachers and maybe by our associates to believe that we're left brain or right brain. Mm-hmm. I'm the creative in this relationship. My partner does the books. Or I'm really good at spreadsheeting things, but my partner is the one who designs everything. We talk our dormant side of the brain into believing it's deficient, into believing that you are not a creative or you don't have a business mind. My grandfather was a banker. My father was a banker. I was supposed to have been a third generation banker. Guess which side of the brain the banker uses? It's the left side, right? It's the analytical side. It's the spreadsheet. It's the business side. When I came down to Florida, my right brain was completely dormant. I was led to believe that I didn't have creativity. And I didn't want to buy that, Fong. And it took me a decade to reignite. And this book that I'm writing is all about, reigniting and rewiring and redirecting parts of the brain so you can alter your freaking DNA. I changed what was supposed to have been a path that was left brain dominant into awakening the right side of the brain. And go to my website, see some of the houses I've designed, some of them, I've written 6 books in 5 different genres. Mm-hmm. The most successful people that you look up to, the most successful people that you read about, the most successful people that you admire are able to toggle back and forth between right brain and left brain. If you pigeonhole yourself and believe that I'm only left brain or I'm only right brain, if you get them mixed up, I only have a business mind or I'm only a creative, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. Mm-hmm. And those who are most successful within nanoseconds are able to toggle back and forth between the two lobes. That's what I'm able to do now because I never bought into the fact that I wasn't a creative. Mm-hmm. You got to keep it in balance, though. I mean, there's sometimes I've been too creative and I didn't put everything through the business filter. I might have had a magnificent looking home, but my margins were compressed because I let the creativity, get carried away. Mm-hmm. So, but if you're listening to this concept, it should be very freeing, very, very liberating to know that you can, with a little work, reawaken the side of the brain that you were told from it since you were a child that you didn't have the ability to do.
So what would you say was the very first thing you did to overcome that pigeonhole?
Because I always admired the artist. Mm-hmm. If you were a painter, a sculptor, a singer, playing an instrument, you name it, I always thought, wouldn't that be great if you had that ability, Frank? I always wanted that ability. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I can't sing, and maybe I don't want to take the time to learn to play an instrument, but what if I were to create three-dimensional art? Mm-hmm. What if I were to, again, if I were to open my curtains and you'd see the ocean, build 3D art on a sun-drenched canvas known as the Atlantic Ocean? And I thought, all right, well, even in my first houses that I did, again, I am a businessman first and an artist a distant second. The first houses I did were $50,000 crack houses, $50,000 US, crack houses in bad parts of town. But you know what, Fong? I made those the nicest houses on the block. I started I'm not going to say exercising. I started reawakening the right brain by, simply applying 3 coats of paint instead of 2, or, maybe putting, new sod down instead of just grass seed, and putting a new mailbox in and just instead of standing up the old broken one. Right. What would an artist do if this was his palette? And an artist wouldn't go to the paint store, let's say I was a painting artist, and buy the cheapest paint, buy the cheapest palette, buy the paintbrush that was made out of polyester instead of camel's hair. You would invest your passion into that palette, into the paintbrush, into the paint. That's what I did with real estate. So in real estate and in life, I believe, not just real estate, build your reputation first and the bottom line will follow. Mm-hmm. So yes, my margins were compressed on my early deals. I was only making $5 to $7 grand per house. By the time I was done at that first time home buyer price, because I didn't do a house worth more than 100 grand for 5 years. I'm going to repeat that. I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000 for 5 years. My margins got bigger and my reputation grew, which allowed me to jump to the higher price points. And now, I've done 44 houses on speculation with an average selling price of $14.5 million on that direct oceanfront in Palm Beach County.
Wow. I saw some of those pictures. Those are absolutely phenomenal. It's breathtaking to see some of the artistry that you put into your projects. And it's just amazing to just witness that being possible. It's amazing.
And I think, I want everybody watching and everybody who will read my new book to realize that's possible for you, because if you take an artist approach to your craft, and that is actually a title to one of the chapters, you will begin to be appreciated for the artistry that even if it's making, plastic bottles, if you take an artist approach, and I break down exactly what that means to whatever your craft is, you're building a reputation, you're building a skill, you're building a following, and eventually you will build your bottom line.
Well, you mentioned your book a few more times, and the thing is, I can't wait to see that book. So when it does come out, I would definitely pick up a copy and just kind of go through all the great nuggets that you have. Now,
well, let's do another interview. Let's go through some of it when I can show it, or even when I can talk about it. I'll show the image is like a Van Gogh water lily painting. The front cover is just unbelievable. But these are things that I'm not dead yet, but I could tell you as a post-mortem to my career to this point, it's incumbent upon me to share. I'm not going to say a shortcut, because my overnight success took 25 years, and maybe, so could yours and the viewer. But I feel an obligation and a desire to share some of these things that have worked for me when it came to, in a word, Fong, creating my own reality. Mm-hmm. And for those folks that we look up to, the Sarah Blakeleys that created the Spanx line, to the Steve Jobs, to the Elon Musk, didn't they create their own reality? They created something that didn't exist before in anybody else's reality. And to me, they created a reality. They created their own reality. Yeah. And it's made them very wealthy. And I think that's I know that's available to everybody, that's watching your program.
Mhm. Right. For all your books, what you do very uniquely is that everybody who buys your book, actually the proceeds goes to charity. And you're a person who's very giving and gives back to the community. And for I believe it's the Caring House project that you fundraise for. Now, tell us more about that project and why you're so passionate about that project.
Well, first of all, that's our charity. I started that charity. It's not somebody else's charity. The Caring House Project Foundation was built on the premise that charity exacerbates poverty. In other words, it doesn't help poverty. We built this on the presence of self-sufficiency. So we, very simply put, I'm a simpleton. I went to 4 high schools in 4 years. I graduated with a 1.8 GPA. I didn't have the benefit of pursuing a formal education beyond that last year of high school. I moved to Florida with a $50 bill in my pocket and a one-way plane ticket out of Indiana. So I'm a small corn-fed country boy from a small town. I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
I was talking about the foundation. So what's so
as a linear thinker, I provide housing to the most wealthy in the world that really don't need another house, Fong. They have houses all over the world.
Right.
Shouldn't I be providing housing to the world's most desperately poor and homeless? And so we created the Caring House Project Foundation, where we provide self-sufficient villages to the poorest country, or in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, that being Haiti. Right. When I say self-sufficient villages, we provide housing, typically 50 houses per village, a community center, school, church, clinic, renewable food, clean drinking water, and some form of free enterprise in that village so that that village can be self-sufficient. And it'd be great if I was talking about we just did one or the second one we just finished. We've done 27 self-sufficient villages in the last 17 years. Wow. They've all succeeded. They're all thriving. They're not just surviving. And that free enterprise model, that capitalism that's brought to each village, is the component that allows those villages to thrive.
Wow, that's amazing, and your passion for that is completely something that I could feel when you're talking about it. It makes me want to go, okay, yeah, let's support this, because this is something that is very important and it really helps so many people in the world. So yeah, for people who are listening, check the foundation out and buy his books, because like his books are absolutely phenomenal. They have lots of great information in there, and plus you're helping out people in need. So it's always a good idea to look into that.
Besides supporting us, I want you to also, for yourself, realize that everyone listening to your program and watching your program has a professional highest calling. In other words, a gift that God gave you that allows you to put food on the table, that you do a little bit better than most. Not better than everybody, but a little bit better than most. That's why it's a professional highest calling. You also have a spiritual highest calling. And I didn't know that existed until my mid-30s. And then I realized I was able to put both of them together. The gift God gave me to design and build and sell these massive mega mansions on speculation. I built a $50 million house and sold it. That was the biggest one I ever did at 32,000 square feet. And then yet taking that spiritual highest calling, which is providing a house that basically is like 500 square feet. It's as big as this tree house. And allowing a family that was living in a mud shack covered with palm fronds for a roof and rodents running across the floor the size of cats, that self-sustaining existence. So if you can in your life put together your professional highest calling, what you do for a living a little bit better than most, with your spiritual highest calling, in my case providing self-sufficient housing for the world's most poor, you can skip right over happiness and land on joy. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Wow, great advice there. Something I want to touch upon is your running career. Now, lots of people just go, you know what? I'm going to go attack the marathon. But you want to do the ultra marathon. You've done it, what, 7 times now?
So yeah, the definition of an ultra marathon is any distance that's longer than a 26.2 mile marathon. So it could be a 50-kilometer race, a 50-mile race, a 100-kilometer race, 100-mile race. I happen to have run the toughest foot race in the world, according to the National Geographic. It's not my claim, National Geographic. It's called the Badwater 135 mile ultramarathon.
And what I find funny about that is they claim it to be the most toughest, and you said that's your favorite.
Well, it's because it's more or less the first one I ever ran, you know. So why I'll be honest with you, I don't love the sport. I love that race. And so if you can imagine this is the power of the mind. And there's a chapter in the book that's titled Relentless Forward Motion. And it applies, you don't have to be into running to apply relentless forward motion, right? Life is about relentlessly moving forward. Lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, 282 feet below sea level. In July, 135 miles, nonstop, on blacktop pavement that's over 200 degrees. Ambient daytime temperatures are over 130 degrees, running from the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere to the base of the highest point in the Western Hemisphere. So the highest point in the Western Hemisphere, I mean in the lower 48, is Mount Whitney. This race finishes at around 9,000 feet, just below the the top of Mount Whitney. You're traversing over 3 mountain ranges. So you go from below sea level to a mile up, and then you go down to sea level and back, and you end up finishing at about 9,000 feet. You got to finish that race in under 48 hours. There's only 100 people that are invited from around the world. Last race I ran in, there were 24 countries represented when that start gun went off at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Wow. So yeah, I mean, it is the toughest because you're running in those conditions with a time limit, with that elevation change, in that heat. It's the ultimate test of mind, body, and spirit.
So to prepare for something like that, what's your training regimen?
Right. So preparation's everything. I will, some of the bizarre things I'll do is I have a harness that I hook up, to my chest, and I pull a tire behind me over a bridge to simulate the hills. Cause I live in Florida. I mean, we're flat. So to simulate hills, I'll go over this bridge. It's only like 0.6 of a mile long from one side to the other. I've done that for 24 hours straight, pulling this tire. I've put on a mechanic's jumpsuit, one of those things that's made out of canvas. It weighs about 40 pounds to simulate the heat. At my house, I have a sauna with a treadmill in it.
Wow. So
that sauna will go to 150, and I'll get on that treadmill and try to stay in there as long as I can. I'll take, 4 of these in there until I overheat. I'll come out, I'll cool down a little bit, then I'll go back in. So it's a matter of training for the miles, training sleep deprived, and training in the heat.
And there was one race where you were actually injured right before, and you had to kind of speed up your training in a shorter period of time.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones I didn't finish. That one I didn't make it because I did not have enough training time. Truth be told, I've entered that race 12 times. I have failed 5. Wow. I've made it 7. So that's how tough it is. Like, there's no guarantee that I'm going to see that. And each time, Fong, each of the 12 times, I put in the same amount of training. Mm-hmm. It didn't, not every time that I see that finish line. So that's how challenging it is.
And you mentioned that there might be an 8th time that you're going to finish it.
Here's what I learned in life. Never say never. Never, ever say never again. Because I have crossed that finish line, with the eyes rolling back in my head, completely out of my mind, after 44, 45 hours of running or walking, crawling, throwing up, you name it, and said never again. And yet the next year I'm back there. So I will never say, I told my wife, she's ready for me to say never again. Because there's no aid stations in this race. So I have a crew. This is a whole other lesson that I give a talk called Conquering Your Life's Bad Waters, that crew leapfrogs me 1 mile, every mile, that hydrates me, feeds me, has my toilet paper, sunscreen, hats, ice. So without that crew, Fong, just like in life, without a good crew, there's no mile 5, let alone mile 135. And my wife always has been the crew chief, who's in charge of the other 3 people who's selflessly give of themselves just to make sure that I don't die and that I have a better chance of seeing the finish line.
So the first time you heard about this race and the first time you decided to do this, was there a lot of people who told you, yeah, don't do that and don't attempt it, or you just went, no, you know what, I don't care. This is something I want to do. And what was it about this race that drew you to it?
Listen, I mean, I've been told don't do a $50 million spec house. There'll be no buyer. Matter of fact, I had a guy from MIT a professor from MIT who was quoted in USA Today as saying there's no buyer for a $50 million house. This is back when I was building it. And here I'm a guy that doesn't have I don't even have a degree. I'm not a builder. I'm not a developer. I'm just a guy out of high school. And I proved him wrong. So yes, there's a lot of people that were legitimately concerned for my well-being because of the conditions out there, but nobody's ever died in this race. Matter of fact, those who are running it are extremely well trained, and you're not just lit in because you want to get in. It's a resume process, an application process, like getting into Harvard or Yale. You have to write a dissertation to get into this race. So yeah, I mean, every year that I'm getting older, I hear more people saying, Frank, you think it's a good idea because, it's not just the age, it's, like my muscularly, I'm fine, but you don't know what's happening to your organs. Like your organs, you can't really exercise your heart, your liver, your pancreas, your kidneys, those things you can't exercise. You can't really get those in better shape. So there are people, doctors that are, saying, look, pretty soon you're not going to be able to do it. And they're right. I mean, of course, there'll be the day that I can't do it. And that day's closer than the first time I ran the race, but I'm not willing to say never again.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that being able to be successful in this run translates well into business and real estate success? Or would you say the real estate success has translated well into your marathon run?
I mean, honestly, I will tell you that I give this talk called Conquering Your Life's Bad Waters. Not everybody's going to run this bad water race, but you do have bad waters in your life as a metaphor. And I define those as the insurmountable, the incomprehensible, and the impossible. So, viewer, if I were to tell you, hey, you want to run 135 miles in 130-degree heat nonstop in that elevation, you're going to say that's incomprehensible and impossible. It is. And I believe that you can break through that incomprehensible and impossible just with faith, patience, and the passage of time, and of course, training. And so, Fong, when I trained for my first race in 2004. I finished my first race in 2005. And what's happened to my career since finishing that first race, what's happened to the design of my houses, now there is no incomprehensible and impossible and insurmountable. I mean, it's all overcomable. It's all possible. It's not insurmountable. It has opened up synapses in my mind and my brain that I never knew were possible. So I would say that it was breaking through that barrier and getting to that finish line that has helped my real estate career.
Wow, absolutely amazing. For somebody yourself who's so successful and your persona is like a rock star, how have you been able to kind of take that persona and still be so approachable and be so down to earth? Because that's something that I can tell right now. You're very easy to talk to. You're very approachable. And the thing is, when somebody just walks down the street and sees you, they may not think that. They go, "Wow, this guy looks pretty aggressive or very tough." So how do you balance that image?
I think it's really the faith. Like I'm a Christian, and I do believe that in creating your own reality, there's a public persona and there's a private persona. I'm very keen on, as you saw during this Yugo WeGo tour, as I posted, paying attention to the invisible, the downtrodden, the forgotten, the poor, the lowly, the homeless. Those are the people that I feel drawn to. There was a day back before Trump was president, because he's endorsed 3 of my 6 books. Literally, written me an endorsement for 3 of my 6 books. And I remember one day on a Monday, I was feeding the homeless at a soup kitchen. And later that day, I was in his office in New York City asking for and receiving an endorsement for my 3rd or 4th book. And I had just as easy a time relating to the people in the homeless line getting their food as I did to, Trump in his office. That is, and I don't drop names. I'm not a name dropper, but you can pick up my books and see that, he has in fact endorsed my books, 3 of them. So, I think having this deep A, faith, and B, if anybody calls himself humble, then they're not humble, right? Or a deep sense of humility. But I can tell what kind of person you are by the way you treat the busboy, the dishwasher, or the waiter.
Mhm.
And if I go out to dinner with you and you mistreat the waiter, we'll never go out to dinner again. And I watch that very keenly. I want to make every one of those people feel like the most special person on earth. And in those 18 hotels that I stayed in, every single housekeeper got a personal note from me thanking them for the beautiful clean room that they made for me. They got a signed book, and they got a $10 bill or something that I left behind. Those are the little things that I have taught my daughter, who's now 22 years old. She does it wherever she goes. I think, and it's not an effort. I really, really enjoy making the lowly and the invisible feel like the most important person in the world. And maybe that's what rubs off, what you sense. I know it's what my wife saw. I mean, she saw the same thing. Like, I just got a haircut today, but hair was longer and it's been different colors and all that. And she saw my heart. Like, she didn't see she calls all the adornments, the earrings and the color of the hair and the clothes. She saw the heart of the man. And that's why I've been married for 30 years.
Well, congratulations on that, because I'm sure the two of you make a complete dynamic duo there. So it's wonderful to see. You mentioned before about during the race, you had a crew that helped you along, and then how important that is in your everyday life and in business. Can you share more about how do you build a good team dynamic, and how important is it to have the right people in the right places?
I will say that's one of my weaknesses. I'm still learning that, because I'm working on it, but still to this day, I'm more what you would call a benevolent dictator, or another word would be an enlightened absolutist. Mm-hmm. Basically, that says, it's going to be my way, and I know what's best for you. And if you work for me and you're going to follow my way, your paycheck will always clear. You will always have benefits. You will get your vacation. I will always live up to my end of the bargain. I believe in myself. I can always better my previous best. So if I believe that for me, I want to believe it for you as somebody that works for me. And that hasn't always been the best approach. I've burned out a lot of people that I pushed too hard. So I've learned as I've gotten older to, like, for example, I work in the treehouse. They don't have to, I'm kind of, demanding and intense, but I let you work from home. As long as you perform and you've got your responsibilities, you don't need to be around me, and I don't need to be around you. I've gotten way better at delegating than I was until like 5 years ago. Like a delegation, you hear about it. I still struggle with that. Mm-hmm. But I realized that, with the lack of education that I had, that I always had to find somebody that was better at me at that particular description or job description than I was. But I never lost sight of the fact, and this is something that I'll defend till the last day I'm on earth, is it's my risk. It's my money. I'm taking the risk. As an employee, you're not. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's my way. It is going to be my vision. I'll take input. Of course I'll take input. But when you build like I just sold a $14 million house on spec, meaning, I had no buyer in mind. I built it, and like the Field of Dreams, the movie, you hope that they'll come. And so if I'm going to sink, it's going to be on my decisions. I'm not going to sink on allowing somebody else to kind of take control of that. And that's, maybe not everybody listening is, in the kind of business where you're taking the kind of risks I'm taking, but the more risk you take, the more in charge you better be. And I personally didn't have an open door policy. My wife did. Like, she would listen to all the problems that all the people had and all that. I didn't have time for that. And I know it sounds cold, but I needed to focus on the vision, on the big picture, and on me executing. And if I execute, then I'm expecting you to execute as well.
So for somebody who executes so well and have so many things in the air that you're juggling around and managing, what's your morning routine?
Okay, so I'm a big advocate for going to bed early and getting up early. I have for, I can't tell you how many years, 25 years. I go to bed Eastern time, around 9, between 8:30 and 9. I get up at between 4 and 4:30. I get all of the training or exercise, if I'm off season, done by 6 a.m.
Wow.
So if I'm just in maintenance mode, I'll go for a 6-mile run, get that done by 6.
Wow.
If I'm in the gym, I had this mantra, I still do, if I'm not training, 6 or 600 by 6 a.m. 6 miles or 600 reps. If I'm in the gym, different reps, body parts. Could be, core exercises, upper body. Actually, as a runner, you don't want a big upper body, mostly legs, by 6 a.m. And then, obviously, my daughter, she's now out of college, but for 10 years, I walked her to school. I told you this story, I think, at when I saw you at that event last November. I walked her to school every single day for 10 years. That's 1,652 times. Wow. I walked my daughter to school. She never sat in the back seat of a car from pre-kindergarten to 8th grade. I wanted to take that time as a dad to be with her. And honestly, it was my favorite 10 years of my life. When she ended up, I drove her to high school for the first 2 years. And then when she got her license, that was it. It was, she drove herself. So I always left that morning time for family time. And then I've been in this treehouse for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't written a book, Fong, until I built the treehouse. There's a chapter in the new book that talks about creativity and ingenuity is what's rewarded in business today. And to do that, you need a place to draw out your creativity and ingenuity. And I teach you how to find that place or create that place. So, and then I only put that's 6,288 miles that I just put on that Yugo. I typically put 3,000 miles on my car a year. I don't drive much because I'm going to point that way on A1A, which is our Ocean Boulevard. All my projects that I've done over the last 22, 23 years have been within 8 miles of my house. Nice. So I go to the job site. I'm very hands-on. My thumbprints on every square inch of those houses. And then I turn it off, by 5 or 6 o'clock at night. When my daughter was younger, we're watching SpongeBob SquarePants, and having fun after a work day. And then I'm in bed by 8:30 or 9.
Nice. So what would be one message that you would like to share to the entire world?
One message to share with what?
With the entire world. Everybody should follow this message.
Well, if it was before this new book, I would say exercise your risk tolerance like a muscle. Mm-hmm. Eventually, it will become stronger and able to withstand greater pressure. The one thing that I felt like I have and had and still have beyond most of my competitors or just beyond humanity is the ability to not let fear stop me when it comes to taking a risk. And it's because, even though my muscle's really small right now, it's because I've exercised my risk tolerance like a muscle. Mm-hmm. And it has become stronger and stronger. So the first $50,000 crack house that I did was a huge risk for me because I was making $100,000 as a tennis pro. I quit a $100,000 a year job at 21 that allowed me to buy a Ferrari when I was 21 to go and renovate crack houses in really bad parts of town. That was a huge risk. And I kept making my risk tolerance, my risk muscle stronger and stronger to the point now where, building a 15 or even a $50 million spec house, it's still risky, but my tolerance is so strong now that I don't let that fear associated with taking that risk stop me. That's probably the one, if you only allowed me one, that would be it.
Well, if you have time, I'll give you 2.
Here's the other one then. I'm glad you gave me that, is because everybody watching this program of Fong's has been blessed with the ability to succeed at some level. Mm-hmm. And you need to realize that those blessings are not meant for your sole benefit, but they are meant to share with others who will likely not succeed at your level. Back to that professional, spiritual highest calling. And when I realized I needed to be a responsible steward for the blessings God had given me, the professional highest calling blessings God had given me, and I became a responsible steward for those blessings, meaning I started building villages in Haiti and helping the homeless here in the United States, guess what happened to my career? It exploded. So if you realize that there's a passage from the Bible, and don't let this freak you out if you're not into the Bible, okay? It's a good life mantra. So if you just heard the word Bible and you tuned me out, tune me back in and see this as a great life mantra. To whom much is entrusted, much is expected. To whom much is given, much is required. Mm-hmm. It's a great life mantra. Happens to be from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verse 48. But man, oh man, when I applied that, I wrote a whole book called The Tap, basically on that premise. My life and career and personal life and everything just took off.
Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you very much for that insight. Before I let you go, I have 5 very quick questions for you. They're for fun. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind. What is the next experience that you would like to be able to experience? The next thing you're looking forward to?
If it's planned, it would probably be the book tour, the real tour associated with the release of my next book. Mm-hmm. I'm really looking forward to that. If it's something that's not planned, I've always wondered what it would be like to be a crash test dummy, a real one.
I'll pad it up before you go in.
Why not?
If you were a superhero, what would your name be and what's your superpower?
Boy, I mean, I really admire superheroes. Maybe it would be, my name would be Risk. It just had a big R on my chest. And my superpower would be taking risks that the average human being would never consider taking.
Wow, very original. And then if you had an opportunity to get advice from somebody, dead or alive, anybody that you can get, who would you like to get advice from?
Genghis Khan.
All right. You have Genghis Khan in your living room, and he says he's hungry. What's the special dish you can prepare for him?
Me cook it?
Yeah. What's your specialty?
Okay, I could probably make him some really good avocado toast. And if he's not into that, I could make him a bowl of Fruit Loops with 2% milk.
Nice. And my last question is, what is success like? And before you answer that, there's 4 items. Give me a number between 1 to 4.
3.
1, 2, 3. So how is success like a cupcake?
Yeah, it's sweeter. It's sweeter on the outside, and you'll never fully appreciate the work that went in, that the baker put into making it. You're just savoring that cupcake, but somebody had to put in the work to create that sensation, that savory sensation. Very few people are willing to put in the work or realize how much work's put into creating a successful cupcake.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here, your time, your wisdom, your stories, your advice. I'm sure everybody has learned a lot from this interview, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great time with Fong's program. I thank you for having me, and we'll be back when the new book comes out.
Sounds good. Now, what is the best way to get in touch with you to get your books or to find out more about what you do?
I'll tell you what, it's not my line. Others have said my website is like going to Disney without leaving your living room. So I would go to Frank-McKinney. It's just my name with a dash, not underscore, but a dash McKinney.com, frank-McKinney.com. And you can take tours of all these beautiful houses I built on the ocean. Mm-hmm. You can go to Haiti and see this Google Maps presentation of the 27 villages that we built. All 6 of my books, soon to be 7th, have sample chapters that you can read before you buy them. And as Fong said, if you do buy them, one $20 book provides 200 meals in one of our orphanages in Haiti. So frank-mckinney.com. Also, I'm doing a lot more on Instagram now. I was kind of a Facebook person, but now Instagram, a lot more. So the Frank McKinney on Instagram, you'll be able to, just like Fong did, kind of follow me across the country when I did the Yugo Wego tour. The Frank McKinney on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again. I can't wait for your book. Everybody watching, make sure you get a copy of his upcoming book and take a look at his website. There's lots of great stuff there. And until next time, thank you very much. This is Frank McKinney. My name is Fong Chua. Until next time, today is the day to unlock your potential. We'll see you later.